Hey guys, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope all you are doing fine. This is the next part of Magus of the Wizarding World. So let's start without any delay. Chapter 71, Heist 1. Anyways, you three shouldn't focus on the forbidden corridor. Whatever is hidden there is protected by witches and wizards with decades more experience than the three of you together, said Matthew with a tone of finality. But, tried Harry to continue. No buts. Don't you have a Quidditch game you need to focus on? I've heard Snape will be the referee this time, which isn't necessarily good for you since you hate each other. MHHH, yes, you are right. Thank you for your help, Matthew, said Harry with a defeated expression but determination behind his eyes. He won't let the topic rest, thought Matthew as he watched the three first years leave the library. Well, I should also make my move soon since Hagrid will soon get his dragon, and with that, the endgame of this year will begin, concluded Matthew as he returned his focus to his transfiguration homework. Scene break. At midnight Matthew left the empty Ravenclaw common room and headed for the forbidden third-floor corridor while using a multitude of stealth spells. The door leading to Fluffy was locked, but any first year could open it with an unlocking charm. Strangely, there were no monitoring charms on the door. Matthew really wondered how mad Voldemort must be to not realize that this was a trap, since everything here pointed to this whole setup being a trap. After making sure that all the teachers were far away, especially Dumbledore and Kirillmort were still in their respective offices, Matthew began to unlock the door with an unlocking charm while still being invisible and headed into the room. There it was, a large three-headed dog currently staring and growling at the opened door and ready to pounce on anyone who would come through. You could see a flash of confusion in its eyes as the door closed again after Matthew entered the room while still being invisible. Fluffy must have realized that something was wrong, since it began to bark in every direction looking for an intruder but was unable to locate it. Matthew, who didn't want to risk it anymore, conjured a violin and animated it to play a goodnight melody he remembered from his childhood. After a few moments, Fluffy's eyes began to become heavy and all of its three heads fell asleep as its body placed itself on the floor in a comfortable position. The conjured violin should last for at least 3 hours before it disappeared, enough time for Matthew to accomplish his goals. After the Cerberus fell asleep, Matthew opened the wooden trapdoor and looked into the darkness. There was no way to climb down into the dark hole. He had no choice and jumped down into the darkness. Flump! With a funny, muffled sort of thump, he landed on something soft. He sat up and felt around, his eyes not used to the gloom. It felt as though he was sitting on some sort of plant. It was the Devil's Snare. Only directly above him shone light through the trapdoor into the darkness of the hole. The silent music of the violin and the snores of the Cerberus were now a distance away. As he tasted around himself in the darkness, the tendrils of the Devil's Snare began to grip his limbs. But Matthew stayed calm and didn't fall into panic. The Devil's Snare was a plant that liked the dark and damp. With his mastery over fire magic, he willed a powerful jet of bright and warm, white but harmless flames into existence. The moment the flames appeared in the dark room, the tendrils loosened their grip on him and cringed away from the light. Wriggling and flailing, it unraveled itself from his body, and he was able to pull free. Now that he could see again, he saw he was inside an empty stone room with the Devil's Snare planted on one side where only a stone passage headed away on the other. He began to walk down the passageway and on its end arrived at a brilliantly lit chamber, its ceiling arching high above him. It was full of small, jewel-bright birds, fluttering and tumbling all around the room. On the opposite side of the chamber was a heavy wooden door. After taking a closer look, he identified the flying keys as keys, but only because he knew beforehand what they really were and directly looked for them. They are so fast and small that they are hard to recognize. He should find a way to enhance his senses. Maybe there were some rituals, but he knew of none in the restricted section. Levitating in the air was a pair of broomsticks. After taking a look at the broomstick and another one at the flying keys, yeah, no way I will fly to catch the key. Since he had one of the most overpowered cheats in Hogwarts, why not use it? Although he wanted to pass the protections without directly opening a portal to the last chamber to satisfy his own ego that he wouldn't be outdone by 3 first-year students or a mad Dark Lord. He opened one of his blue glowing portals and passed through the door without the need to unlock it. The next chamber was so dark he couldn't see anything at all. But as Matthew stepped into it, a light suddenly flooded the room to reveal an astonishing sight. He was standing on the edge of a huge chessboard, behind the black chessmen, which were all as tall as himself and carved from what looked like black stone. Facing him, way across the chamber, were the white pieces. The towering white chessmen had no faces at all. Matthew began to cast a multitude of scanning spells to determine the exact nature of the enchantments on the giant chessboard. It wouldn't make sense for him if Voldemort played a chess game when past the protections to steal the stone. There was most likely a way to bypass the chess game. And he wasn't disappointed. The whole chess game had a big hole in its defenses. The room was so enchanted that the door to the next room could only be unlocked once the White King was destroyed, with an absolute conditional enchantment. This kind of enchantment could only be changed once the condition was fulfilled. Until then they were unbreakable and unchangeable. But it wasn't stated that you needed to play the game to destroy the White King. Since the chess game repaired itself after a while, Matthew cast a fire explosive spell at the opposite side. All of the white figures blew up in a massive explosion and the wooden door behind them opened by itself. Damn wizards really lack logic. This was so obvious that it was boring, thought Matthew as he passed through the chessboard and stepped over the destroyed figures of the white side. He was pretty sure that Kirill Mort used a similar method himself to bypass the protection in the canon, or rather in the future. He most likely didn't bother to analyze the enchantments. He seems more to be a kill and destroy and think later type of madman currently than the cold and calculated type of person he was in his youth. Chapter 72, Heist 2. Matthew walked through the next dimly lit passageway. A familiar disgusting smell filled his nostrils. Well, another troll waiting for me. At least I can practice my earth spells on him, laughed Matthew mentally, not a bit bothered by the upcoming fight. After all, it was only another dumb troll. They may be spell resistant, but blunt force still harms them fine. At the end of the passageway was another massive wooden door waiting for him. As he opened the door, his eyes met with the eyes of a troll even larger than the last one he fought on Halloween. The big and ugly creature began to roar the moment it spotted Matthew and instantly swung his big wooden club in his direction. Thanks to his regular exercise, Matthew was able to dodge the attack with a quick jump succeeded by a roll. He quickly obscured the sight of the troll by summoning a dust and dirt cloud before the troll. It was one of the earth spell he created in the last week. The distraction gave him enough time to gather enough magical energy to cast the large stone fist spell. Similar to its energy-based counterpart, it was strong enough to physically harm the resilient creature through blunt force. The troll got pushed back and lost its footing, but Matthew didn't stop his attacks. He began to shoot multiple stone projectiles at the troll's head. Soon the dumb creature lay on the floor knocked out. That was close. I really need to improve my reaction speed and senses. If I were a bit slower I would have been meat paste, thought Matthew while he caught his breath. He quickly began to repair the damages to the room, since he didn't want to alarm the teachers that someone had already stolen the stone while keeping an eye on the knocked-out troll. The troll should wake up soon since it was only knocked out, and thanks to its rough and thick skin it didn't take any damage. Once everything was back as it was before, he walked through the next door into the next room. It was a wide but empty room with only a wooden table in the center of it. On the table were 7 differently shaped bottles standing in a line. What kind of potions did Professor Snape prepare?" muttered Matthew as he approached the table. The moment he stepped through the door over the threshold, a purple fire ignited behind him. On the other end of the room, the way forward was blocked by another fire with black-colored flames. Since he knew the flames would appear, he wasn't bothered by their sudden appearance. He continued straight to the table. He also ignored the roll of paper lying next to the bottles since he already knew the solution to the logic puzzle Snape created. After all, thanks to Sarah, he had a total recall of the Harry Potter books. Matthew was more interested in the potion and the flames since there were not many fire-based spells in the Hogwarts library. In the 2 longest bottles was nettle wine, while in the 3 mid-sized one was a poison. After analyzing each of the poison bottles, Matthew quickly lost interest in them. They were only relative common poison, although deadly. Every student would need to create antidotes to in their 5th year. The rounded bottle and the smallest bottle were far more interesting. This was potions Snape created personally. Each of the potions countered the curses contained in their respective flames. The flames were cursed similar to Fanfictions but weaker. They were also resilient to any form of extinguishing or flame resistance that isn't exactly designed for the flames and its curses. Only the predefined enchantment cast by the flame creator himself, in this case, Snape, could extinguish them. After letting Sarah analyze the flames and their enchantments, he also gathered a bit of the potion to experiment later with it. The room would reset itself once nobody was longer alive inside it. The only way to leave the room, at least for common wizards, was through the flames, so either you died or used the correct potion. The vials were also so enchanted that they would refill themselves once the room was reset. After confirming his theory, Matthew took the smallest vial and gulped down the whole potion. It was as ice flooded his whole body from tip to toe. He stepped into the dark flames. They engulfed his whole body, but he couldn't feel them. Strangely enough, they were enchanted so they wouldn't harm his clothes, which was a weakness that he could use to bypass them if he didn't have the potion. He could transfigure himself with a timed rune formation into the fabric and throw himself through the flames. Once the timer ran out, he would transform back. The flames were so dark that he didn't see anything while continuing forward. The last chamber was a brightly lit large round room, with the mirror of Erist in its center. There was nothing else special about it. He didn't locate any further enchantments. All that was here were the enchantments on the mirror. In Matthew's opinion, this was a wasted chance since Dumbledore could easily use the room to trap the Wraith of Voldemort here until he found a way to kill him. So many lives could have been saved that way. He walked to the mirror and took out the fake Philosopher's Stone he created during the summer holidays. After scanning the complete enchantments, he was happy that he prepared a back door beforehand since he was now sure there was no real way for him to get the stone now. He placed the fake over the rune formation and channeled his magic into the runes. They began to glow and the stone in his hands disappeared and another one appeared and the runes on the mirror dissipated. The history books about the Flamels always described it as ruby red in color, but it was more akin to a deep blood red. Once he held the stone in his hands, he could feel the power inside the stone. He quickly stored the stone in a sack he enchanted with runes to hide it from someone else sensing it. After placing the stone in his trunk, he opened a portal close to the Ravenclaw Tower and left the chamber without leaving any trace behind. Matthew silently stepped into the dorm he shared with his friends to not wake them up. But they were currently sitting on their bed and waiting for him. As they stared at him as he opened the door, Roger began to ask, "Where were you, Matthew?" "I needed to go to the bath, sorry for waking you up, guys," he replied with an apologetic look. "So you were in the bathroom for almost 3 hours. Don't lie to us, Matthew. You can share the truth with us," answered Blake, slightly angry. "I am sorry, guys, but you know I love magic. And the teachers only rarely give pre-UL students access to the restricted section. I sometimes use the night to sneak into it and do a bit more reading on more advanced topics or some topics frowned on," lied Matthew with an actual half-lie, since he often did that in the past. "So you study dark magic? Are you sure that is a smart thing to do?" asked a worried Harold. "There is no dark magic," scoffed Matthew. "This is a purely made-up thing by the Ministry to restrict magic that can be easily abused or is too dangerous in their opinion. Magic is all about intent. You can even torture or kill someone with a tickling charm or a levitation spell," explained Matthew. "That may be true, but there is a reason why some books are in the restricted section. They could exhaust your magic. That's why they are only available for older students. You should be careful, Matthew," explained Roger. "I know, but the theory is still interesting. I am very careful in my exploration of magic. A wand is like a gun, and normally you don't give guns to children, but in the magical world, everyone walks around with a wand. I was always aware of the dangers once I started in Hogwarts. Come, let's go to sleep since I am spent," said Matthew as he lay down on his bed. "Good night, guys. Don't worry, I am very careful. You know me," he said as he closed his eyes. Chapter 73, Immortal Thread. "Are you okay, Matthew? You look tired," asked a worried Cho, who was currently sitting with Matthew and Hermione in the library behind a big pile of papers and books studying together. Yeah, I am fine. I just didn't sleep much. I've gathered some unexpected data during my current potion research that kept me awake. Turns out I am not always right. I also can make some very wrong assumptions," replied Matthew with a chuckle as he looked at the worried Asian girl. "Did you break curfew again?" came Hermione with a bossy tone from the other side. "You shouldn't break the rules," she continued with a scandalized voice. I know, but the day just doesn't have enough hours for me, especially with curfew," replied Matthew with a defeated voice. "Don't worry, Hermione. Curfew isn't one of the rules you could get thrown out for. At most I would have to do some detentions. But most teachers are understanding, especially if you are a good student." He calmed the bushy-haired first-year down. "If you say so. But please be careful," said the worried girl. "Yes, don't worry. Come, let's continue studying. Tilda scene break tilde. Oh, how utterly wrong I was," mused Matthew as he returned to the room of requirements, where he once again checked the results of his latest experiments on the Philosopher's Stone. But this is also good. Matthew spent the last few weeks after stealing the Philosopher's Stone experimenting and studying it. After all, even Nicholas Flamel only knew a fraction of the things the stone could accomplish, summarized to turning metal into gold and immortality through the elixir of life. His systematical study of the stone with the help of the AI allowed him to discover many possible functions. The Philosopher's Stone was full of pure energy derived from the life force of many humans. Matthew confirmed that this particular stone was created during the Black Death pandemic around the year 1350. From the stone, he derived the ritual for the creation of the stone, but this was something only a Dark Lord would do since it required hundreds of thousands of human lives to form a stone of this size. He also was able to replicate the elixir of life, the alchemical potion that kept the Flamels alive for centuries. But it had some major flaws. It only added lifespan to the body. It converted the life force inside the stone into lifespan in form of an elixir, but the body didn't stop aging, it doesn't get revitalized. The life force inside the stone is too chaotic in nature to create an elixir that added directly life force to the consumer. It was a flaw inherent to this Philosopher's Stone. Based on its creation, Matthew improved the ritual to create a Philosopher's Stone so it contained pure usable life force, but it would most likely remain a theory. This new version of the stone would be not in crystallized form, but it would become a liquid similar to blood and could be absorbed by someone. It would then grant the consumer a lifespan of millions of years and empower his body further while keeping him youthful. The vast amount of energy would allow him also to access many new alchemical powers like transmuting different materials at will. At least in theory. The creation of the stone would require trillions of human lives, far more than humans on Earth. He would need to sacrifice multiple generations to create one stone. Although he would do a lot to ensure his survival, he wasn't that mad. The high cost for the stone came from the conversion of chaotic life force to pure usable life force. It wasted a lot of energy. But there was no way to improve the process, at least at the moment. With the stone currently in his possession, Matthew could accomplish many new things that were a problem for him previously. One of them was acquiring raw resources in large amounts. He discovered that he could turn not only metals into gold but also stones, wood, and dirt into simple metals. Unfortunately, it didn't work with magical metals like goblin silver for some reason. Something was missing there. Since he didn't possess a sample, he was unable to figure it out. He filled one of the compartments with different kinds of metals and rare elements so he had a stock of them if he ever needed them. He also created enough gold in form of different bars and coins so he could exchange them in a pawn shop if he ever was on the run. The most interesting discovery for himself was that he could possibly create high-grade magical essence with the stone. With that, he would be able to create a new potion to expand his magical reserves. His progress after all slowed down to the level of a talented wizard in his 5th year. Yes, he was far more advanced than students similar to his age, but in a few years, there would be a war that would endanger him. And he was at least 60 years away from the level of Dumbledore and Voldemort at his current speed. So this discovery was a welcome surprise. But while he was trying to create high-grade magical essence, he made a discovery that utterly surprised him and also worried him. Sarah, is this analysis really correct? You didn't make a mistake during your calculations, he asked the AI mentally. Yes, my calculation was made while considering all common scientific safety and failure-proof measures. These results are correct with a probability of 99.3%. When he scanned the Philosopher's Stone in Gringotts, he soon found out that the stone was created with humans as the main ingredient. The obvious conclusion for Matthew was that the creator of the stone was a Dark Lord based on the amount of lives needed. The supposed creator was Nicholas Flamel according to every history book in the magical world. The only discrepancy he found were some records in the non-magical world mentioning the stone as early as in the 9th century in Spain. He ignored them as he believed they were just some legends, but there could be more to them than on the first look. During his experiments he found two distinct magical signatures remaining on the stone. One of them was the one of the creator and another was the one who used the stone the last centuries. And they were different from each other. It seems that Nicholas Flamel wasn't a Dark Lord but another third party created the stone and Nicholas acquired the stone. There should be another Philosopher's Stone out there since this stone was created over 4 centuries after the first records of the stone. Well shit, there may be another Dark Lord level thread out there that also was immortal and centuries old. At least I can return to my original plan and exchange the Philosopher's Stone for the knowledge in the Flamel's library, maybe even a scholarship. Being the student of Nicholas Flamel would give me a lot of prestige, planned Matthew as he observed the blood-red stone in his hand. But after I took full advantage of the Philosopher's Stone, well, I can't wait too long since the Flamel's lifespan was limited without the stone. Let's get back to work, he thought as he returned to his experiments to create the high-grade magical essence. Chapter 74, Visiting Hagrid. Matthew was currently walking to Hagrid's hut. He had a really good mood today. Just now on his way down through the castle, he spotted how Harry and Ron pressed their ear against the forbidden door on the 3rd floor to check if Fluffy was still alive. They were now pretty sure that Professor Snape would soon steal the Philosopher's Stone, while Hermione actually suspected Quirrell. How did he know that? Well, Matthew continuously practices the mind arts every day. His mastery over occlumency also improved his legilimency, in which he reached a new level. He was now able to scan surface thoughts of unprotected minds without alarming or harming them. And his recent scanning of their minds showed that Harry recently spotted how Snape threatened Quirrell, which confirmed his suspicion. While Hermione really started to suspect a teacher, because she realized that Quirrell's stutter was fake. Apparently, she remembered that natural stutter only occurs at the beginning of a sentence, not in the middle or end of it. He was currently heading for Hagrid's hut for a small visit, which he did from time to time because of events like today. Another piece of information he picked from Harry's thoughts was that they met Hagrid acting strangely in the library today, searching for books in the dragon section. That meant the events around the dragon egg began, and Matthew obviously wouldn't miss seeing the real-life breeding of a dragon. It was valuable data he only could gather in other countries since Britain didn't have any dragon reserves where they were bred. There were only some common Welsh green and Hebridean blacks in the wilds watched by the ministry, but that was too risky to just casually study them. Once he arrived at the hut of the gamekeeper, he knocked on the massive wooden door. "The door is open, come in you three," came the reply from inside. Matthew opened the door and entered the hut. "Hello Hagrid, I don't know which three you mean, but it's just me today. I came over for a small visit," he greeted politely. "Oh Matthew, it's you, came for a visit, huh? Come in, I may find a cup of tea or two for you," said Hagrid as Matthew entered the small hut that was currently very warm, almost hot. So Hagrid is currently nesting the dragon. Sarah scans and records all the data about the dragon egg currently in the iron pot on Hagrid's fireplace, requested Matthew. It didn't take long before another knock came from the wooden door, interrupting their chat. It must be Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They also wanted to visit today, said Hagrid as he opened the door. "Hello, you three, come quickly in." "Hello, what brings you three here?" asked Matthew, who got spotted by the golden trio. Hello, Matthew," greeted Harry. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, just visiting Hagrid. I do that occasionally." "And you dodged my question what you three were doing here," replied Matthew with a smirk. We were here to ask Hagrid a few questions about the stone," replied Hermione. "Shhhhhhh. Did ye lose your mind? Ye can tell everybody about the stone, said a panicking half-giant. He, don't worry, Hagrid. I knew long before the three of the Philosopher's Stone. It was me who told them about Nicholas Flamel. I even already stole the stone, said Matthew while laughing. What? The other four shouted. Just joking. Man, guys. Don't be so tense. I already cast a privacy charm, so nobody will listen in, continued Matthew. They continued to ask Hagrid about the stone until Harry felt it was too hot inside the hut. Well, that's something, Harry muttered to the others. Hagrid, can we have a window open? I'm boiling. Can't, Harry, sorry, said Hagrid. Harry noticed him glance at the fire. Harry looked at it, too. Hagrid, what's that? Said Hagrid, fiddling nervously with his beard. That's, Oh, Hagrid seems to have acquired a dragon egg. I was checking it out for a while now, interrupted Matthew Hagrid's nervous fiddling, as a black egg appeared below the lid of the pot. Where did you get it, Hagrid? Said Ron, crouching over the fire to get a closer look at the egg. It must have cost you a fortune. Won it, said Hagrid. Last night. I was down in the village having a few drinks and got into a game o' cards with a stranger. Think he was quite glad to get rid of it, to be honest. But what are you going to do with it when it's hatched? Said Hermione. Well, I've been doing some reading, said Hagrid, pulling a large book from under his pillow. Got this out of the library, Dragon Breeding for Pleasure and Profit. It's a bit out of date, o' course, but it's all in here. Keep the egg in the fire, cause their mothers breathe on IMC, and when it hatches, feed it on a bucket o' brandy mixed with chicken blood every half hour. And see here, how to recognize different rent eggs. What I got there's a Norwegian ridgeback. They're rare, them. He looked very pleased with himself, but Hermione didn't. Hagrid, you live in a wooden house, she said. But Hagrid wasn't listening. He was humming merrily as he stoked the fire. Soon they left Hagrid's hut very worried. Matthew followed after, confirming that Hagrid would call them once the dragon would hatch. He and Hermione headed for the Ravenclaw Tower. Don't worry, Hermione. Everything will be fine. See it as an opportunity. How many times will you see a real dragon? Or even see one hatch? This is an event you won't see often in your life. Tried Matthew to pacify the bushy-haired girl. But Hagrid could land in prison. The breeding of dragons is outlawed in Britain. She continued to rant. If it comes worst to worst, we will find a way to help Hagrid. Ron's and the twins' older brother Charlie works as dragon handler in Romania now. I am sure he is able to help us out. And if worse comes, then I am sure Headmaster Dumbledore will be also able to help us out. He is a very resourceful man. Tilda scene break tilde. While waiting for the egg to hatch, Matthew continued with his experiments on the stone and his training in earth magic. Although the exam phase was also approaching, he didn't really need to study much. His understanding of theoretical magic was superior to any teacher and his practical skills were beyond Owl if not Newt level. Beep. Congratulations host, you reached the 4th level of earth magic. Your understanding of the law of earth reached 1%. Finally, thought Matthew, now I can test out my theory and combine both elements. This should accelerate my understanding and mastery of both elements, hoped Matthew as he continued on with his training. He started to melt down some stones, tried to control the resulting lava. It took him a few tries, but his combined understanding of fire and earth helped him succeed. In that manner of fashion, he continued to practice the lava element during his waiting times for his experiments on the stone. One particular afternoon he succeeded in summoning lava. Similar to the Aquamenti charm, but just with lava and without a particular spell. Beep. Host's understanding of the law of fire reached 3% and the law of earth 2%. Yes, it works. But it still takes time. Sarah, can you estimate what level of understanding Dumbledore and Voldemort have reached? He asked. According to the gathered data, it should be around 20% and 25% of each element. This value is based on host's progression and capabilities. An more accurate estimation can be made with more data. Chapter 75, Norberta. So Dumbledore and Voldemort are still far away from the peak that I can currently perceive. Since there should be also something after mastering a law, maybe they are only a bit powerful mortals. And there are higher beings out there far beyond them, not to forget legendary figures like Merlin and Morgana. Murmured Matthew. Sarah, show me my status. Beep. Stats calculated. Displaying new status. Matthew Mason, Wizard, Rank 2, Strength, 2.7, Agility, 2.7, Vitality, 2.9, Magical Energy, 115.2, Law of Fire, 3%, Law of Earth, 2%, Status, Healthy and Energized. Well, my progress pretty much slowed down to natural pace. I am approaching the level of an 7th year student. It's good but too slow. Matthew turned to the cauldron behind him with a deep blue glowing substance behind him, but luckily I got the Philosopher's Stone and am able to extract high-grade magical essence from it. Now all I need is to create a new potion formula. He bottled the high-grade magical essence into bottles. While I have the stone, I should keep producing it. Having a nice amount of rare ingredients will always be useful. Sarah, begin the potion creation process. Try to create the potion with the most promising effect. Requested Matthew. I have a birth to attend, he said as he looked at a note that he received today. Task confirmed. Beginning potion creation process. Estimated needed time, 25 days 16 hours and 34 minutes. Scene break. On his way to Hagrid's hut he met Hermione just coming from the library. Outside they were joined by Harry and Ron, who came from herbology. They hurried through the grounds to the edge of the forest. Hagrid greeted them, looking flushed and excited. It's nearly out. He ushered them inside. The egg was lying on the table. There were deep cracks in it. Something was moving inside, a funny clicking noise was coming from it. They all drew their chairs up to the table and watched with bated breath. Sarah, record the hatching process and activate all useful scanning spells. Matthew quickly requested mentally, as he also anticipated the birth of the small dragon. All at once there was a scraping noise and the egg split open. The baby dragon flopped onto the table. It wasn't exactly pretty, it looked like a crumpled, black umbrella. Its spiny wings were huge compared to its skinny jet body, it had a long snout with wide nostrils, the stubs of horns and bulging, orange eyes. It sneezed. A couple of sparks flew out of its snout. Matthew catched them with an vial he specially enchanted previously to collect fire. It wouldn't be strong enough to contain fire from adult dragons or Fanfi, but for newborn baby dragons it was enough. These flames would prove very useful to comprehend more of the law of fire, since they contained all the properties of real dragon flames, just not the strength. He may also be able to develop a fire resistance potion for dragon flames. Sorry, I just collected some dragon flames to study. I created the vials myself," explained Matthew a bit sheepishly as he registered the other 4 people staring at him. "Isn't he beautiful?" Hagrid murmured as he returned his attention back onto the small dragon. He reached out a hand to stroke the dragon's head. It snapped at his fingers, showing pointed fangs. "Bless him, look, he knows his mommy," said Hagrid. Hagrid said Hermione, "How fast do Norwegian ridgebacks grow, exactly?" Hagrid was about to answer when the color suddenly drained from his face. He leapt to his feet and ran to the window. "What's the matter?" Someone was looking through the gap in the curtains. "It's a kid, he's running back up to the school." It was Malfoy. "Sorry Hagrid, I was so excited for the hatching that I forgot to put up privacy charms," lied Matthew. Obviously he knew that Malfoy would spot the dragon, but he needed Harry in detention so he could see Kirillmort feeding on 2 unicorns. While the Golden Trio was bothered by Malfoy's nasty smile for the next week, Matthew visited Hagrid frequently to record the whole growth process of the Norwegian ridgeback. "I've decided to call him Norberta. Originally I wanted to call him Norba, but Matthew here pointed out thas a female," said Hagrid, looking at the dragon with misty eyes. "She really knows me now, watch." "Norberta? Norberta? Where's Mommy?" "He's lost his marbles," Ron muttered in Harry's ear. Matthew could still hear him clearly and had to suppress a chuckle. "Hagrid," said Harry loudly, "give it 2 weeks and Norbert's going to be as long as your house." Malfoy could go to Dumbledore at any moment. Hagrid bit his lip. I know I can't keep him forever, but I can't just dump him, I can't." Harry suddenly turned to Ron. "Charlie," he said. "You're losing it, too," said Ron. "I'm Ron, remember?" "No, Charlie, your brother, Charlie. In Romania. Studying dragons. We could send Norberta to him. Charlie can take care of him and then put him back in the wild." "Brilliant," said Ron. "How about it, Hagrid?" And in the end, Hagrid agreed that Harry and Ron could send an owl to Charlie to ask him. That set the canon events in stage, and Matthew made the most of it for the next weeks. He visited Hagrid as often as possible and collected a few more research materials. Besides flames, he also collected some skin and scale, and most importantly, while Hagrid was looking away, he was able to draw some blood from the quickly growing dragon. While he was waiting for his potion recipe to finish, the dragon and all the data he was able to collect proved to be an useful extraction. It was so effective that he improved his law of fire comprehension by another %. The events around the dragon played out almost same as in the original, just Hermione wasn't with them because it was too dangerous to head to the Ravenclaw Tower first to get her. But Ron joined them instead because he didn't get bitten by the dragon, since Matthew was able to prevent that. Harry and Ron got caught and got detention with Neville and Malfoy inside the Forbidden Forest. They also were ostracized by the rest of their house for losing so many of the useless house points. Instead they joined now Hermione, Cho and Matthew often during their study session in the library. Soon Harry would meet Kirillmort feeding on unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. But Matthew didn't care much for it. He was sure that Harry would come out of it unharmed since he still had the blood protection of his mother. He was instead distracted by something else. Beep. Potion creation process finished. New magical reservoir enhancement potion formula successfully created. Please name the potion. Finally, it took forever. Let's call it the Tears of Blood potion. Since only the Philosopher's Stone allowed me to create the potion. And the stone is basically made of blood of innocent people. So the name seems suitable. Decided Matthew. Beep. Name confirmed. Potion is now called Tears of Blood. Chapter 76, Tears of Blood. Snape wants the stone for Voldemort, and Voldemort's waiting in the forest, and all this time we thought Snape just wanted to get rich. Explained a scared Harry to Matthew in a silent corner of the library. So let me get that right. You saw someone or something drinking unicorn blood in the Forbidden Forest. Pretended Matthew to analyze the situation. That's insane. Not you, Harry. The person who drinks unicorn blood must be insane and accepts to live a cursed life. Only someone who would be sure to find a way to counter the curse of an insane person would do that. Yes, I know. It's Voldemort, the centaurs told me, and Snape must be stealing the stone for him. The elixir of life must be able to counter the curse. Harry tried to blame Snape again. I don't think so. Snape was a teacher at Hogwarts for years, and I know personally that he is actually a good person who needs to pretend to be a bad person because of politics. He helps me often with advanced potion knowledge while pretending to give me detentions. It must be someone else. Also, I don't believe the elixir of life would counter the cursed life unicorn blood gives. Explained Matthew, only if, what if Voldemort didn't die when the killing curse got repelled by you, but instead only lost his body? He may be possessing someone in the castle, and that someone is just a disposable pawn drinking unicorn blood to keep Voldemort alive, who will create a new body with the elixir of life. That makes actually a lot of sense. Maybe Snape is possessed. Murmured Harry, who raced off to find Ron. Well, that could have gone better. He is really stubborn. Sighed Matthew as he saw the boy leaving the library. Well, maybe he will develop a more critical thinking ability after he meets Quirrell in the mirror chamber. Well, not that it matters, my potion is ready tonight. Not like I will have to help them fight Quirrell Mort. Thought Matthew as he returned to Cho, who was doing her homework. What did Harry want? She asked. He was a bit panicking because he found out what was behind the forbidden door on the 3rd floor. I had to pacify him a bit. Explained Matthew, let's focus on our work. Scene break. Beep. Potion perfectly brewed, no problems found. Matthew heard Sarah's mechanic voice in his mind while holding and observing a vial with a blue glowing concoction inside. On the table were another 15 vials of the potion waiting for him. Finally, it's ready. Sarah, how often can I use the potion? According to my calculation, the first 3 potions should be consumed every 2 weeks in order to not strain the body. From then on the potion can be consumed weekly, since the effect won't be as strong anymore and the body will be acclimated to it. That means I have enough potions for the rest of the year until the beginning of the next year. For the rest of the year, I should focus on creating raw materials with the stone so I can stock up on the stone's products. It's May already and the exams are in their final phase. Soon the confrontation between Harry and Voldemort will happen and the year will end. The Flamels will run out at the end of June of potions and die, so I have 4 weeks. Analyzed Matthew. In view of that, Matthew started to extract another batch of high-grade magical essence, since the process takes some time. Before he prepared a bed in a corner of the room of requirements where he would consume the Tears of Blood potion. Once he sat in a comfortable position on the bed, he gulped the blue content of the vial down. A warm feeling spread through his body, but especially in the center of his body slightly below his heart. He could feel the concentration of magic rising massively. Beep. The massive increase in magical energy registered. 120. 136. 140. 143. This potion didn't cause any pain in his body, only heat. But he felt some kind of strain on his soul thanks to his heightened control and perception through his occlumency. After a few minutes, the heat in his body calmed down. Potion effect finished. Congratulations, the host reached the magical energy level of a young adult with a new value of 162.5. Wow, that was a massive increase in power. He muttered in amazement. But the effect will be less and less with every potion consumed. He thought, and this was the only potion I could take before the conflict between Harry and Kirill Mort happens. He thought seriously, Sarah, show me my status. Beep. Stats calculated. Displaying new status. Matthew Mason, Wizard, Rank 2, Strength, 2.7, Agility, 2.7, Vitality, 2.9, Magical Energy, 162.5, Law of Fire, 4%, Law of Earth, 3%, Law of Wind, 1%, Status, Healthy and Energized. Well, the results for my work this school year are not bad. Not that I reached the 4th level with 3 different elements. I should be able to take on a subpar wizard like Kirill if the worst case scenario happens and Harry is in danger. Since he isn't really a capable wizard, he seriously didn't use his wand while fighting Harry in the books, but instead tried to choke him with his own hands. He thought as he finished the magical essence extraction. Scene break. Over the course of the next few weeks, Matthew worked continuously on the Philosopher's Stone, getting as many raw ingredients from it as he could store. He also created a big amount of gold so he would be able to buy some things he directly needed. His trunk was getting awfully full, so he had to enchant a few enchanted bags to carry more stuff. But he limited the amount of gold he created so he wouldn't destroy the economy, which would earn him many enemies. He just created enough to gain the resources he needed in the close future. One evening he had to hurriedly leave the room of requirements through a portal because he got interrupted by Kirill Mort. It was soon time for him to finally try to steal the stone, so he most likely was guided by Voldemort to quickly check on his Horcrux. Kirill had probably no idea what he was even doing in the room, and all the information would die with him since he wouldn't survive the week. The rest of the inhabitants of the school were distracted by their final exams. Matthew completed his exams without trouble. Once their exams were finished, Hermione was panicking about all the things she forgot about in her Hermione-esque fashion. Without a doubt, she would only get outstandings. Cho must have completed her exams also nicely since she always looked happy. After their exams were finished, he was with Hermione on the way to the Great Hall for dinner until he heard a pair of loud footsteps coming closer. Hermione, Matthew. He heard Harry's voice coming from a corner, followed closely by the red-headed Ron, who was slightly out of breath. Shit. I really got involved in the main event, thought Matthew as he listened to Harry's explanation. Chapter 77, Death of a Pawn. Puh, that was close, thought Matthew, who watched the Golden Trio leave. Luckily for Matthew, they decided to split up and focus on different objectives. Hermione, Ron, and Harry would keep an eye on the forbidden door on the 3rd floor corridor over the course of the day, while Matthew would keep an eye on Professor Snape and send them a Patronus message if he should leave for the stone. Since that wouldn't happen, Matthew wasn't at risk of exposing himself directly to Kirill Mort and gaining Voldemort's direct attention on himself. On his mental map, he already saw Kirill Mort pass through the protections of the stone and arrive in front of the mirror, while the 3 first years arrived in front of the door. He summoned his silver glowing 3-legged crow Patronus and spoke to it. "Harry. I couldn't lurk any longer around the teacher's room keeping an eye on Professor Snape since I got caught and no longer have a reason to be there. I no longer have an eye on him," and sent his Patronus towards Harry. That should be enough for them to follow them inside. Thanks to Harry's infamous temper, he won't wait any longer in front of the door and follow Kirill inside. He mused while keeping an eye on his mental map while heading for the 3rd floor corridor. Indeed, the 3 first-year students began to move and headed for the Stone's chamber. He watched as the events of canon unfolded and began to follow them inside the moment Harry entered the Stone's chamber and Hermione returned and picked up Ron. Matthew once again let Fluffy the Cerberus fall asleep by conjuring and animating a violin and was about to jump down the trapdoor again, as the door behind him opened again. And Dumbledore hurried into the room. Matthew raised his wand before sinking it again, pretending to be startled. "Professor Dumbledore, good that you are here." Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed the thief inside, believing it to be Snape. "I was just about to follow them in order to protect them. Please help them," explained Matthew hurriedly while trying to look worried. "Mr. Mason, wait here and help them to the hospital wing once they arrive here," explained the old wizard after stopping for a moment taking a look at the animated violin. After his explanation, he jumped down the hatch and continued onward. "Why didn't he apparate?" questioned Matthew, being aware that the headmaster of Hogwarts was able to apparate anywhere in the castle since the wards didn't restrict him. "He is like me, an actor who wants to let the events play out for similar reasons but doesn't want to cause any suspicions," laughed Matthew in his mind. It didn't take long for Hermione to arrive at the bottom of the trapdoor while dragging the hurt Ron behind her. On his mental map, he could see that Harry and Kirill were currently close and most likely fighting, while Dumbledore was arriving at the chamber. "In a few minutes, the shade of Voldemort will pass through here. Hermione, let me help you," he said as he raised his wand and pointed it at the 2 first years and levitated them up the hatch. "Are you okay? How is Ron?" he asked her while being genuinely worried. According to canon they should be relatively unharmed, but there still could be a butterfly effect. "I am fine, but Ron got hurt by a strike from a giant chess knight on a life-sized magical chessboard. Professor Dumbledore applied first aid on him before he followed Harry to help him, but he still needs to get to the hospital wing," explained the bushy-haired girl like a waterfall. "Sarah, be ready to scan Voldemort in a few moments," he requested mentally as he turned around and pulled Ron and Hermione behind himself, protectively staying in front of them while saying, "Get behind me, something dark is quickly approaching." He quickly conjured a shield and his Patronus. Seconds later an ominous mass consisting of dark smoke and mist flew very fast and past them. Voldemort in his dark shade form looked really scary and dangerous and was only a mutilated soul without a body. The shield and Patronus charm were able to protect them from any negative influences as he passed them. He ignored the 3 students or wasn't even aware of them because of his madness or shade form. What was that?" asked a scared Hermione while staring at the exit where the shade just disappeared. "That must have been Voldemort. He is really still alive. It seems the headmaster was fast enough to take care of him and Kirill. Let's hope Harry is unharmed," replied Matthew. They left for the hospital wing while Matthew levitated the unconscious Ron before them. The moment they've arrived, Madame Pomfrey ushered them into beds and checked them all over while complaining about the irresponsibility of the headmaster. He himself arrived 15 minutes later with an unconscious Harry. Matthew knew that he took so long because he must have checked Harry's scar inside the stone's chamber. He saw on his map that the old man was there alone a while with Harry. The fake stone was destroyed. He felt the destruction through a rune he placed inside the stone during its creation that would notify him once it was destroyed. After the headmaster informed them of the vague details of what transpired in the stone's chamber, he left them alone. They stayed overnight inside the hospital wing because Madame Pomfrey wanted to make sure they were okay. While he was undisturbed at night, Matthew checked the data from the scan of Voldemort's shade form. His body was made of the same form of energy as any soul, but in some kind of twisted and negative way. He also possesses much less of the energy than anyone else. To be precise, he should only possess 1/64 of his original soul's size, since he still didn't use Nagini as his final Horcrux. It was impressive how much potential Voldemort had wasted by wasting so much of his soul, since the original size of his soul was at least double the amount of any other average wizard. This also confirmed that the soul was a direct influence on a wizard's talent and power. Scene break. Harry woke up 3 days later and was fine, although a bit disturbed by the events that happened with Quirrell and Voldemort. After all, the boy made his first kill down there. It was no wonder that he didn't feel good. He also thought that the Flamels would die because he was unable to save the stone. And Matthew couldn't correct him, since this would only cause trouble for himself. Matthew meanwhile prepared himself to explore a place he wanted for a while but couldn't because of Voldemort's presence inside the castle. He currently was enchanting a container he made of an iron titanium alloy he transfigured from some raw ores he created with the Philosopher's Stone, with runes and enchantments to contain anything placed inside without letting it influence the outside world. Thanks to the usage of chaos runes and multiple charms, he was able to create a container that would be able to keep every Horcrux locked safely inside. The next day Matthew arrived at the entrance leading to the Room of Requirements. Chapter 78, The Room of Hidden Things. Matthew once again walked before the entrance to the Room of Requirements up and down 3 times, like he did hundreds of times in the past 3 years. But this time his goal was another room that he never entered before in order to preserve the canon timeline, at least the actions of Voldemort, since a predictable enemy was easier to beat. I want to enter the Room of Hidden Things, thought Matthew while walking up and down the wall. At his third passing, the familiar wooden door appeared at the ancient stone wall. Once he opened and stepped through the door, he arrived at an unfamiliar sight. Inside he saw a room full of different things. It was a completely chaotic place. There were mountains full of different things and objects. There were thousands and thousands of books, either in tottering piles or in very old-looking bookcases. There were bottles with potions, many of them broken. A lot of different stuff like cloaks, hats, jewels, clothes, some bags, old furniture, broken wands, brooms, and many more things. It was a room full of chaos, the Room of Hidden Things. Damn, sorting through this stuff will take me ages. And I can't use any of the house elves since it could potentially alarm Dumbledore. I don't think I would finish it before graduating, even if I spent every second of my free time here. Cursed Matthew as he took in the beautiful but chaotic sight. He took a broken wand into his hand, but nothing happened, and a lot of this stuff is just broken trash. Maybe I could use the raw components, but nothing more. I really need to find some cheap labor, muttered Matthew as he threw the wand back onto one of the piles. Well, back to my main objective for today. I need to find the diadem of Rowena Ravenclaw. First, let's try this. Accio diadem of Ravenclaw. Matthew felt his magic acting, but something blocked it. While waiting for a few seconds, nothing happened. Well, damn, that would have been too easy. Now that I think of it, didn't Harry already try it and it didn't work? This must be a protective charm worked into the room. After all, it's called the Room of Hidden Things. He mused as he began to walk into the room. Well, no choice, I have to search for it the old-fashioned way. Just as he wanted to begin his search, he heard the AI chip's mechanical voice in his head. Beep. Picking up energy radiation of 2 different souls in 2 directions. Oh, thank God for you, Sarah. But 2. Is someone else's Horcrux here? It can't be Rowena's Ravenclaw's soul seed inside the diadem, since it should be in the same location. So who else could have created a Horcrux? He wondered. Well, more research subjects for me. Sarah, lead me to the closest location. Matthew wandered further into the room under Sarah's guidance. As he passed another pile of interesting-looking objects, among them a heavy, blood-stained axe, he muttered, it would be a waste to let all of this being burned to ashes through Fanfictions. After a few minutes of fighting himself through a labyrinth made of piles of curious objects, he arrived at a particular chest full of jewels. Beep. First soul energy radiation coming from this chest. So the unknown Horcrux must be inside. Since the diadem of Ravenclaw was close to the statue of an ugly old warlock statue, he muttered as he cast a few detection charms. No traps or curses. Maybe it got placed here without knowing what it was. Matthew began to work himself through the jewels. Most of them were not of high quality, but would together still fetch a few thousand galleons. Unfortunately, his trunk was currently too full with the materials he created with the stone, although some jewels would be nice to have since they also could be exchanged for money without alarming others about the origin of his gold or harming the economy. It's not like he created them from valueless metals like the gold he created with the stone. As he searched through the chest, one particular stone fell into his eyes. This can't be. But this must be the Horcrux. The particular stone he found was very familiar to him since he was currently in possession of a similar stone. It was a small yellowish stone made of multiple cubic facets, undulating the energy from a powerful but familiar and unsentient soul. Matthew fished the stone already in his possession out of his trunk and compared the both of them. The moment both stones came close, a flash of energy appeared and the 2 small stones fused together, forming a slightly bigger one. The soul inside the stone became more active but was still not awake. Damn, it was really another part of the stone. And they fused together without me doing anything. I need to be more careful if I find another one. I am in no way ready to face the being inside the stone. Just what are they? Wondered Matthew as he observed the strange multifaceted stone resting on his palm. Now I should be able to gain a deeper understanding of it. But I have other priorities now. He muttered as he began to head in another direction after putting the stone back into his trunk. Under the lead of Sarah, he arrived at a place where an old-looking shelf was located. Close by stood the old and ugly statue of a warlock, on whose bust Harry would place the diadem without knowing what it was, just using it as a marker. At least in the original timeline. Matthew had to search around a bit before he spotted it. It looked like a nondescript and colorless old tiara, which Matthew felt he shouldn't pay much attention to. But only on the first look. This was only the effect of a powerful notice-me-not charm Voldemort must have placed on the diadem. Once he used his occlumency to overcome the effect of the charm, he saw how the diadem of Ravenclaw really looked. It was a beautiful diadem made of the finest goblin silver with a blue sapphire shaped like an oval worked into it. He could feel powerful magic from it since his senses became really sensitive to magic. Unfortunately, most of it was the disgusting and corrupt feeling from Voldemort's Horcrux. But deep behind the dark magic, he could feel something beautiful and pure. Yes, the soul seed of Rowena Ravenclaw is still present. If I manage to remove the Horcrux, I can restore this priceless treasure. And even use it. Most people only believe its powers to be a legend, but they just don't understand how to use it. He cheered as he looked at the legendary artifact. This would be the first artifact in his collections of treasures every proper wizard should have. The first piece being the founder of his house made it even more important. Although he could feel the suggestions from the diadem to put it on, he ignored it with the help of his occlumency. He knew this was a trap of the Horcrux trying to take possession of his body. He took out the chest he prepared before coming here and put the Horcrux inside until he was ready to handle it. He began to return to the entrance of the room, although he wanted to explore and collect all the treasures inside. Currently, he just didn't have the time or the space to carry them with him. But he will definitely return next year. This was his treasure trove now. It was already late and he returned to the Ravenclaw Tower. Chapter 79, End of the Year. A lot happened this year and Matthew was able to gain a lot while keeping the canon timeline mostly intact. Even though he was really busy all the time, he once again managed to finish his exams at top of the year. The same goes for Hermione. Even through all her panic, there was never a point to worry about her results. After the death of Kirill and Matthew acquiring the first Horcrux of Voldemort, the year finished really fast. He had no real opportunity to take a closer look at the diadem of Ravenclaw and kept it all the time safely inside his trunk. He rather spent his time producing as many materials from the Philosopher's Stone as possible since he would have to return it by the end of the month. The school year approached its end and the population became busy with packing their stuff before the feast since the Hogwarts Express would depart the day after. The mood in Gryffindor wasn't good since they were at the last place thanks to Harry and Ron losing so many house points during the dragon smuggling. The rest of the houses were also somewhat cast down since Slytherin was once again winning the House Cup this year. Matthew didn't really care since he already knew better. Harry was also cast down since Professor Dumbledore told him he would need to return to the Dursleys over the summer holidays. Matthew talked a lot with the young boy to raise his mood but was secretly happy about this development since it was critical for one of his plans over the summer holidays. Only the photo album he got from Hagrid with pictures of his parents raised his mood. Tilda scene break. Tilda. Another year gone. Dumbledore said cheerfully. And I must trouble you with an old man's wheezing waffle before we sink our teeth into our delicious feast. What a year it has been. Hopefully, your heads are all a little fuller than they were. You have the whole summer ahead to get them nice and empty before next year starts. Now, as I understand it, the House Cup here needs awarding, and the points stand thus: in fourth place, Gryffindor, with 312 points. In third, Hufflepuff, with 352, Ravenclaw has 471 and Slytherin, 472. A storm of cheering and stamping broke out from the Slytherin table. Yes, yes, well done, Slytherin, said Dumbledore. However, recent events must be taken into account. The room went very still. The Slytherin's smiles faded a little, while Snape had a displeased frown on his face. The corrupt shit show began and Dumbledore began to disperse points. Matthew and Hermione also got points, but not as much as Harry and Ron together. and lastly with Neville's bravery to stand against his friends, Gryffindor ended up taking the first place in the House Cup while Ravenclaw got second, since the smartest house was always close behind Slytherin's lead and only was behind them thanks to Snap's unfair treatment. Which means Dumbledore called over the storm of applause, for even Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were celebrating the downfall of Slytherin since most of them were sheep. "We need a little change of decoration." He clapped his hands. In an instant, the green hangings became scarlet and the silver became gold, the huge Slytherin serpent vanished and a towering Gryffindor lion took its place. Snape was shaking Professor McGonagall's hand, with a horrible, forced smile. Well, at least Harry's mood got a lot better, thought Matthew as he watched the Gryffindor table, before turning his gaze to his own house where he saw Hermione a bit downcast but trying to be happy for her friends. "Don't be so down, Hermione. Did you still not realize that the House Cup is nothing more than the carrot on the stick to keep discipline in the castle? It has no consequences for your personal growth or later career," explained Matthew, trying to lift her mood. "I didn't think of that," she realized. "Well, just keep doing your best and view the points you gain as praise from the teachers personally. And you will go far in life," he said with a smile while eating some tasty pudding. Tilda scene break Tilda. The next day all the students were heading in direction of London with the Hogwarts Express. During the general confusion, Matthew made his move. He performed an exchange charm on an invisibility cloak that he enchanted himself and looked similar to the Potter's invisibility cloak, and exchanged it with the one in Harry's trunk. Since he didn't use his wand, nobody was able to sense his use of magic since there were no professors present and he didn't use his wand. He borrowed the cloak since Harry wouldn't need it during the summer holidays, and the Dursleys would put his stuff into the cupboard under the stairs the moment they arrived in Privet Drive. He would break into Privet Drive once he accomplished everything he needed the cloak for this summer and put it back. The Blood Wards wouldn't harm him since he wasn't harming or intending to harm Harry. After a few hours of a train ride through Britain, the Hogwarts Express entered King's Cross Station, and the students who already changed into their non-magical clothes began to leave the train. After saying goodbye to his friends, he looked for Harry. "Harry, I hope you will enjoy your holidays. Although I know your relatives are unpleasant," he said as he found the boy leaving the train. "If something should happen, you can call me since I live not that far away from Surrey. We even may meet during the summer," said Matthew after handing Harry a piece of paper with his phone number. After greeting the Weasleys and chatting a bit with Hermione's parents, they watched how Harry had to leave with Vernon Dursley, Harry's fat uncle who once again had a purple head. Harry would keep them at bay this year with his bluff of defending himself with magic since the Dursleys didn't know about the no magic at home rule, although Petunia Dursley should know since she grew up with Lily. "How was that, Vernon Dursley?" He heard the voice of his father who approached him from behind. "Hello son, we were a bit late today." Mr. Mason greeted his son who was currently hugged by his mother. "Hello Matthew, you grew a lot again." Mrs. Mason fawned over her son. "Hey Mom, Dad. Please Mom not here." He muttered, "You know Mr. Dursley, Dad?" "Yes, he works for Groenings, that's the company that supplies us with drills for our machines. I have a business dinner this year at his home about a new contract," his father explained. "Right, there was an event like this. Wasn't that when Harry met Dobby the house elf?" Matthew mused as he followed his parents to their car. "Right, the name of the business partner was Mason." "That's perfect. I don't need to break into Privet Drive to put the cloak back. I just need to finish my business before the dinner and accompany my parents," Then I can put the cloak back without trouble," thought Matthew as he drove with his parents to their family house. Although Matthew had currently holidays, he had no time to waste since this time he had a very tight schedule and a lot of things to accomplish. He was currently heading for Diagon Alley where he needed to visit Gringotts to exchange some of the gold he created with the Philosopher's Stone into wizarding currency. It was impossible for him to create galleons from the gold himself since they were not only made from gold but also had counterfeit magic unique to the wizarding banks in the world. This kind of magic was a tightly kept secret by the magical financial institutes of the wizarding world and hard to replicate even with the help of the AI chip since it was created by multiple different races together. All of them had their own kind of magic that Matthew didn't know. The only bank in Britain was Gringotts thanks to an ancient agreement by the idiots of the ministry, which allowed the goblins to gain a monopoly over the finances in Britain. Basically, the purebloods made themselves dependent on Gringotts since most of their wealth is there. Only a few smart pureblood families may have scattered their finances over Europe in different banks, but most of them weren't very smart. He could sell the gold to different ingredient suppliers but they don't have such a large need for gold to sell it in the magnitude he currently needed. Besides, as currency, gold was only used rarely, and for very specific purposes in alchemy, potioneering, and different magical products. It could take months or years, time that Matthew didn't have at the moment to sell the amount he currently needed since all of them had their own supply either way. Matthew once again stepped through the familiar entrance of the marble building and approached one of the free tellers. "Greetings, Teller Argus. I am here to exchange some gold I recently acquired into wizarding currency," he began to greet after reading the goblin's name from the nameplate on his desk. The goblin Argus answered with a typical goblin sneer, "Hello wizard, will the transaction amount be larger than 1,000 galleons?" "Yes, I found quite the large pile of gold," explained Matthew politely. "Please follow me to a private room, wizard," said the small creature as he guided Matthew through a corridor into a private room with a table where a few chairs stood on both sides. The walls were made of marble that was decorated with carvings. Among the carvings you found some privacy runes hidden. Once the goblin closed the door, the runes began to glow for a moment while he pointed to one of the chairs. "Please take a seat." "About how much gold are we talking here?" began the small creature with a glint in its eyes. Matthew took his trunk out and piled a few bars of gold onto the table, this much to be precise. Argus took a bar into its hands and began to inspect it, growling, "Nice. 24 carats pure gold and a sizable amount. The exchange rate between gold into galleons is 1 kilogram of gold to 10,000 galleons. For every transaction, Gringotts takes a fee of 25%. 25% is too much. I can visit the gnomes in Swiss next month and exchange the gold with a fee of 5%. He bluffed. "You also are unable to threaten me with my gold since I am not a pure-blood wizard and don't keep all my assets at Gringotts. At most you would be able to inconvenience me until my schooling in Hogwarts ends. From then on I wouldn't need to do my business in magical Britain. But that would be inconvenient for both parties since we could have a profitable business relationship. After all, potioneering is just one of my future business branches," explained Matthew politely but with a serious look in his eyes. The goblin began to growl but the respect in his eyes grew. "Fine, the lowest I can do or we would have the purebloods on our backs." "That's fine with me for now." They completed the transaction and Matthew left the bank with over 15,000 galleons in his trunk and another 50,000 in his vault. That went better than expected. Well, they also don't seem to like the purebloods but like gold. Most likely I am really a good future business partner for them, thought Matthew as he headed down the alley to a shop he didn't visit for a while. He arrived in front of the trunk shop where he already bought his trusted trunk and entered the small but practical storeroom which was packed with trunks in all sizes and colors. The same old shopkeeper still tended to the store. "Welcome back, what can I do for you today? Is everything all right with your trunk?" asked the old shopkeeper behind the counter. "Yes, I am very happy with my old trunk. But I need actually an upgrade. I would like to purchase a house trunk for myself," explained Matthew with a bit of anticipation in his voice, once he remembered Newt Scamander's epic trunk. "That won't be cheap. The base version cost 10,000 galleons. That's also the amount you will need to pay up front. The rest for the upgrades can be paid later," explained the shopkeeper. "Wasn't it 15,000 galleons the last time?" asked Matthew, positively surprised. "Oh yes, but the Wizardgammo removed in a new law the need to register the trunk with the ministry. The fee for that was 5,000 galleons. A rich pureblood wanted to purchase a few and it was cheaper for him to remove the law altogether than to pay the fee," replied the shopkeeper with a laugh. "Good for me. More customers. And also good for me, it saves me some money." "What are the features of the trunk?" "The standard version comes with one small, 2 middle-sized, and 1 large room that connects them. Security and weightless enchantments are included in the price. But there is no shrinking enchantment for house trunks since that would destabilize the pocket space. Every additional small room costs 1,000 galleons, middle ones 2,000 galleons and large ones 4,000. It takes 3 days for the trunk to be finished since I also need to test the stability of the pocket space," explained the old man. "Okay, I will take one with additionally 1 small, 2 middle-sized and 1 large room. I will pay the 10,000 galleons up front and the rest once in 3 days," ordered Matthew as he took out the money. "Okay, the final price will be 19,000 galleons. Thank you. Here is your recipe," finished the shopkeeper the transaction. "See you in 3 days." "Yes, bye." Matthew left the store after he put his purse back. "So I will still need to use my original trunk as portable inventory until I find a better solution. At least I have a nice portable base now," thought Matthew as he began his way home. 3 days was enough time to finish one of his objectives. He didn't need much storage space for each of his objectives. Now his only problem was how to get there since he still wasn't able to apparate. It was just too risky to study it by himself. Although he knew how to create portkeys, they only could be created for places where you already were once. So he had no choice to use that method of travel. That's it, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also tell me in the comments what you want to see next and if you have any recommendations.